Hi everyone, welcome to the APIA online webinar number 10. My name is Cholathanatri. You can call me Sue. My nickname is Sue. So today I am a moderator in our APIA online webinar today. So this time we received the great honors from two speakers who have the same passion about sustainable honey, but live in the different side of the world. Dr. Maria Anastasiadi from Cranfield University, England, and Dr. Orawan Duangphakdee from Mongkut University of Technology, Thonburi, Thailand. So the topic of this webinar is From Hive to Home, Sustainable Honey Supply Chain. All right, let me introduce our speakers a bit. Then I will talk about our APIA group and the way this webinar works. About speakers, Dr. Maria Anastasiadi is a lecturer in bioinformatics at Cranfield University. He has an extensive background in plant and food science and metabolomics. Her research focuses on promoting sustainability across the food supply chain and enhancing health, promoting properties of food products. Dr. Orawan Duangphakdee is the director of Native Bee Research Laboratory at Mongkut University of Technology, Thonburi, Thailand. She has more than 15 years experience of research experience, which help smallholder farmers produce, collect, and sell high quality honey and honey products through sustainable micro beekeeping. Okay, the agenda today, I just introduced our speakers, and then the APIA introduction will be 5 minutes, and then Dr. Maria will start first. She will talk with her experience about honey and her methodology about 40 minutes, and then Q&A for Dr. Maria. And then Dr. Orawan will share her story about 30 minutes, and then Q&A again. The webinar will official closing at 5 p.m. Bangkok time. So right now you can let me introduce our housekeeping the way we do in this webinar a bit. So please kindly ensure your microphone is muted. Use the chat function to send your comment. And if you have any question, please feel free to put in the chat. And right now you can introduce yourself by saying hello to other attendees in the chat. Please tell your name, your organization, or where you come from. And this webinar will be English speaking only. So let me talk about Asia Pollinator Initiative Alliance, or our group APIA. We start to set this group in early 2020. We want to connect the like-minded people and organizations in Asia to raise public awareness about pollinator protection and sharing our knowledge and sharing pollinator knowledge and resources. And since we start, we have various organizations to join. as as such as WWF Thailand, Cambridge Go Southeast Asia, Biothai or Go Organic Peace International, EarthNet Foundation, Freenet Cooperative, and we have another we have another educational institution, research institution, social enterprise to promote pollinator awareness and protection. You can see the list below this. And we before the COVID era, we have many workshops about beekeeping since 2019. Terrace talk to raise awareness about pollinator. February 2020 workshop in 2020 more and more, and then in Ratchaburi in Rayong in Thailand, and then after the COVID we start to set up our APIA online webinar, and right now is number 10 webinar today. Okay, so my part is end, and I'll send to Dr. Maria to talk about her story. Okay. So Dr. Maria, can you share your screen?
Hi, good morning. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really glad we managed to organize this webinar. And I will spend the next few minutes presenting what I've been doing and my research in the area of honey authentication methods. So I would like to start my presentation. Just let me know if you can see. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Thank you very much. So I'll make a start. As already been mentioned, I'm a lecturer in bioinformatics at Cranfield University, but I have a long background in plant science and food science and authentication. I sit within the environment and agri-food theme here in Cranfield University, which primary aim is to ensure that global food systems are more resilient for the future. And my research focuses on promoting sustainability across the supply chain, and that is at all stages of the supply chain. So it might be from selecting crops that have enhanced resistance to biotic and abiotic stress, such as this imposed by climate change, and also ensuring the safety and integrity of foods at all stages of the supply chain. So just to give you an overview of what I'll be covering today, to start with, I will give an introduction and set the scene about the problem of honey authentication. Then I will give a brief summary of honey authentication methods, which can be broadly classified as classical and modern testing methods. And finally, I will provide an overview of my research, which is aimed at developing novel and affordable, low-cost testing methodologies for honey authentication and quality control. So honey is a completely natural product, which has been part of the human diet for thousands of years. The majority of the world production is consumed as a raw product, with about 10% of the production used in processed foods or for cosmetic products. Honey is particularly appreciated by consumers for its unique flavor and also its perceived health benefits. It is a very popular product in the UK and in Europe overall, and the consumption is increasing every year. since here in the UK, domestic production is quite small, it only covers about 15% of the consumer demand. That means that the majority of the honey that we consume in the UK has been imported by third countries. And the scene is dominated by China, which accounts for more than 60% of the imported honey. And this is mainly due to the fact that it can supply steady quantities of honey at low prices throughout the year. Apart from low-cost honey, China is also a supplier of some premium monofloral honeys, such as acacia or rapeseed honey. And this can be marketed at much higher prices here in the UK. So the fact that honey is such a popular product, in combination with the decline of bee populations worldwide for a number of years now, this unfortunately leaves open the scene for some fraudulent practices. And it is indicative that in 2013, honey was included in the top 10 list of food products most at risk of food fraud, as was declared by the European Union at the time. At present, there is no single method for authenticity testing. Honey is a very complex product. It's a very challenging process. And all the majority of the tests that are available are both time-consuming and quite expensive. So they're not readily available to bee farmers. So this makes the need for a solution that is both affordable and easily accessible. It becomes apparent that we need to provide some more easily accessible methods. So what are the challenges when it comes to honey authentication? So let's talk about, first of all, authenticating floral composition and floral origin of a honey product. So when we talk about monofloral honey, we refer to a product that bees produce either wholly or mainly from a single nectar source. Confidently identifying both the geographical and botanical origin is quite complex because there is a variety of factors which contributes to the variability to the honey composition and its physicochemical parameters. For one, even the bee produce, the honey producer, the bee farmers, can never be sure that the bees have only foraged from a single floral source. They try to control this as much as they can. They move the bee hives from place to place to specific places where they know that a specific flower is in bloom at that time of the year. But still, they can never be 100% sure that this is a monofloral honey. Apart from the question of floral and botanical authentication and something that we can never be sure, as I mentioned earlier, there is also a more serious aspect to authentication, and this is when a honey has been purposefully adulterated. So this can take many forms, and it tries to mislead consumer, both for the composition and the purity of the honey, and also where it comes from and which flower it has been produced from. Many times throughout the years, we've seen headlines regarding honey adulteration. So we've been flooded by headlines in the UK media that the majority of the honey that we buy in our supermarkets is adulterated, it's fake, or about banned contaminated honeys that somehow find their way to our houses. As I said, adulteration is a complex problem and it can take many forms. The most widespread adulteration practice is the addition of sugar syrups or the dilution of premium honeys with cheaper types. Especially the addition of sugar syrup became widespread since the 1970s when plant-based syrups such as corn syrup became widely available. Other authenticity issues are related to practices such as harvesting immature honey with a moisture content of more than 30%, which is then artificially condensed to acceptable moisture levels. And this can impact on its medicinal properties, on its flavor, and its quality in general. And there's also the aspect of contaminated honey with things such as pesticides or antibiotic residues, which can pose a risk to human health. So when we're talking about authentication methods, we can divide those in two broad categories. One is the classical methods, and the other is the modern methods. So the classical methods consist of established wet lab techniques, which are aimed to measure the physicochemical parameters of honey, such as sugar content, free acidity, pH, proline content, which is an amino acid, and other parameters such as ash, electroconductivity, etc. And then there's also some sensory analysis that can be done to trace the origin of honey and its purity. And this needs to be done by trained panelists. The other established classical method for assigning botanical and geographical provenance is called melissopalinology. And this consists of characterizing and counting pollen grains present in honey using microscopy. As you can imagine, all of these techniques need a lot of specialization, a lot of training. They are time consuming and they require highly trained professionals. And as a result, they're very expensive as well. So only large companies can afford to do all these tests. On the other hand, there is a number of modern techniques which have emerged in the past decades, and this can be employed either in conjunction with the classical methods or can be proposed as alternative to these methods that I already mentioned. Example includes mass spectrometry techniques, which can be used to provide a detailed metabolic fingerprint of honey samples. So what compounds, what chemical constituents are present in the honey. Or they can be used to determine adulteration with sugar syrup. So this is the stable isotopic ratio. And this has become an established method in the past decades for adulteration, especially with corn syrup and sugarcane syrup. And this is because this type of syrups are sourced from what we call C4 plants, which have evolved to have a different biosynthetic pathway. And the first molecules that are being synthesized have 4 carbons. As opposed to the majority of the other plants where bees mostly forage from. And these are C3 plants where the first molecules synthesized during photosynthesis have 3 carbons. So these sugar syrups from the C4 metabolic pathway, they exhibit a unique ratio of carbon isotopes, so carbon 13 divided by carbon 12, which differs from sugars from the C3 metabolic pathway. So by doing this method, they can establish where honey has been adulterated with this type of syrups. There's also adulteration with syrups, for example, from rice syrup, which is a C3 plant. And in this case, using this method is also possible, although the margins are not so clear cut and it's not so easy to establish adulteration. The other issue with this method, although it's very good and widespread, is that a lot of time it gives false positives. So sometimes the result come back and they tell the producer that their honey is adulterated when they know for sure that it hasn't been adulterated. And I have discussed that with many producers, which find this quite frustrating. Some other modern techniques include non-invasive spectroscopic methods. So you don't need to distract the honey sample to take the measurements, as is the case with the other techniques. And this can include infrared spectroscopy, such as FTIR, NIR, and FT-Raman. These spectroscopic techniques gradually achieve wide acceptance in the field of food sciences, and they can be used both for quantitative and qualitative analysis. For honey in particular, they have been successfully applied in authentication studies from the aspect of identifying the honey origins and also determining adulterants. So they have dual use. Another emerging technique which has found a lot of use during the last few years is molecular techniques such as PCR, which have been recently proposed as an alternative to pollen grain analysis for botanical characterization of honey, but also they can find use for adulteration detection. And I will expand a bit further about this application. So now I would like to discuss and present some of the results that I have acquired over the past couple of years on creating and developing a new testing methodology for characterizing monofloral honeys using rapid, non-invasive spectroscopic methods. And these are coupled with advanced statistical analysis called machine learning, which is a form of artificial intelligence, which has found a lot of applications in all sort of everyday applications. So things like driverless cars, Google searches, these all use machine learning algorithms, or known as artificial intelligence. So I was leading this project, which was a scoping project funded by the STFC Food Network and the UKRI Science and Technology Facilities Council. And this was in collaboration with the STFC partner, Professor Pavel Matusek, who is based in the Rutherford Appleton laboratory. And he offered us access to the central laser facility, where he has a prototype of a Raman technology called Source. And I will explain in more detail what this means. So just to set the aims and the objectives of this study. So as I have mentioned, the quality traits of honey, and in particular UK monofloral honeys, have not been well established. Reliable authentication, both botanical and geographical origin, requires costly and time-consuming analytical techniques. And most of the beekeepers in the UK are not able to have these tests done. So the aim was to explore the combination of these non-invasive and very rapid and affordable spectroscopic techniques for actually identifying the floral origin and being able to tell whether a honey is monofloral and which flower, which botanical source it comes from. So the specific objectives was to do botanical characterization, also test those methods for adulteration detection. And finally, we wanted also to characterize the monofloral honeys that we collected based on some of their physicochemical parameters. So this was a small-scale project. So we were able to source 54 different UK honey samples in total, which were either directly supplied from the producers or from specialized vendors that operate here in the UK. The majority of the monofloral honeys that we were able to source and are available in the UK is heather honey. And these are mostly produced in Scotland. Other parts that produce heather honey is Wales and Yorkshire, mainly. Also some parts of Devon and Cornwall. But it's only produced in places where there are heather moors, so where these heather species grow, and these are only some rural places in specific geographical areas in the UK. And the other most prevalent monofloral honey in the UK was borage, which comes from borage officinalis, a flower that can be grown for its essential oil. So just to give you an overview of the methodology, all the samples were subjected to physicochemical properties characterization, which were done according to the harmonized methods of the European Honey Commission, and included things like moisture, proline content, sugar content, pH, free acidity, and also we measured the individual sugars present in the honey. 43 of those samples were sent for pollen analysis so that we could have a representative idea of what species and which is the predominant floral source for the honey, to establish whether monofloral or multifloral. And then we also subjected them to measurements using sensors, in particular fluorescence and source spectra. And then we gathered this data, this multidimensional data that we got from those sensor measurements. And we subjected this to quality control, pre-processing of the data, so to remove any noise or any artifacts. And we applied data analysis techniques, for example, principal component analysis, and also machine learning techniques, which we use to create predictive models to be able to tell us whether the honeys that we had acquired were monofloral and which floral source they were coming from. So here I'm going to present some of the results that we got from the physicochemical parameter assessment that we did. So in terms of moisture, these are box plots which show the spread of the values for each type of honey. So we have the red one, the red box is heather honey, the green one is borage honey, and the blue one is multifloral. So there were honeys from other sources such as apple blossom or rapeseed, but the producers were not confident that these were monofloral honeys. So we assigned them into the multifloral category. So with moisture, we can see that the borage and the multifloral, they're below 20%, which is the acceptable moisture content. But heather honey, which comes from a plant species called Calluna vulgaris, this can have higher moisture content. This is due to the nature of this honey. And there is an exception for Calluna honey, that it can reach moisture content of up to 23%, while the rest of the honey needs to be below 20%. And also another characteristic of the heather honey is that the amino acid proline is present in heather honey in much higher quantities than the other types of honey. And this has been established by other research projects in the past as well. In terms of individual sugars, we measured the fructose over glucose ratio. And again, heather honey is quite different to the other honeys, with a much higher fructose to glucose ratio compared to the other types of honey. So again, this is a unique characteristic of heather honey, and probably gives heather honey its unique physicochemical properties. And finally, the glucose to water ratio, again, was different for heather. And one of the reasons was also the higher water content of this particular type of honey. So next, I would like to give you a small description of what the sensor methods that we used entail. So just to get a feel of what we were trying to measure. So in the case of fluorescence spectroscopy, this is a method that has many applications in agriculture and food science, and it's used to determine several properties, such as functional, composition, or nutritional properties in foods. And the advantage of this technique is that it doesn't use any chemical region. It doesn't require to have a laboratory at your disposal to take those measurements. So with fluorescence spectroscopy, we use a beam of ultraviolet or visible light, which excites the electrons in molecules within the food matrix, so within the honey matrix. So these are called fluorescent compounds, and they have a specific chemical structure called fluorophores. So not all the metabolites within a food matrix can produce fluorescent signal. The food needs to have this specific type of molecules. So honey, in particular, contains numerous fluorophores, such as antioxidant compounds called polyphenols and amino acids. These compounds can be used, or they can be candidates for identifying the floral composition of a honey. So, for example, ellagic acid has been proposed as a marker for characterizing heather honey. Another type of polyphenol antioxidant is hesperidin, which has been proposed as a marker for citrus honey, such as orange blossom honey. And molecules, amino acids such as phenylalanine and tyrosine have been proposed as biomarkers for lavender honey. So fluorescence spectroscopy can be used to provide this fingerprint that can aid us in identifying the botanical source of a particular honey. And here, this is the instrument that we used for taking those fluorescent measurements. This instrument, there's also a handheld device. There's another option. If you're out in the field, you can use a handheld device to take the measurements. And these are some representative contour plots that show the intensity at different excitation and emission wavelengths for honey of different botanical origin. So the first one is from a heather honey, the middle is borage, and finally we have a multifloral. So you can see that the fingerprint that we acquire is quite unique for each type of honey. The second method that we used was SOURCE, which is the short name for a technique named spatially offset Raman spectrometry. Raman is a technique that has found many applications in food authentication, as it can provide us again with a chemical fingerprint for a complex matrix such as honey. And SOURCE is a new generation technique which has been pioneered by Professor Matusek, the co-investigator in this project. And this can give us the additional benefit of penetrating through opaque materials such as glass, plastic, fabric, and so on, and provide us measurements through containers. So we don't have to even open the jar with the honey to take a sample to measure. We can use the container, the honey jar as it is, and take the measurement and acquire the metabolic fingerprint of this particular honey. So this technique has found widespread uses in many applications. So it started with medical screening applications such as cancer, for example. It has been employed for detection of explosives, and it's currently in use in over 70 international airports worldwide. And most recently has demonstrated that it gives us really good results for identifying adulterated food products. So it has been used in counterfeit alcohol, for identifying adulterated butter. And this particular study where we used it for on honey, this is the first time that has been used for detecting the botanical origin or adulteration in a honey matrix. So this is an example of how the data look after we have acquired the source measurements. And on the left-hand side, we see the raw data, where we cannot see very clearly the peaks that correspond to the chemical constituents in our honey matrix. But by doing some correction of the data, some manipulation of the data, we can obtain a very clear picture of the chemical composition of the honeys. And finally, after we acquired all these complex data sets, then we applied data analysis techniques in order to see whether we can differentiate between the different types of honey and whether we can characterize them based on their botanical origin. So you can see here that link heather. So the heather comes from Calluna vulgaris. It clusters separately from the other types of honey, and it's the chemical constituents of this type of honey are quite unique, so that we can confidently separate it from the other types of honey. Borage honey is quite close to the other multifloral honeys, but still it clusters quite close together. So we can still differentiate it from the multifloral honeys. So that was the first attempt to see whether there's intrinsic properties in our data that we can, with the first glance, see some separation. The next step is to use the machine learning algorithms to create those prediction models. So when we have an unknown sample, can we confidently assign it to a particular botanical origin? So this is again a PCA plot, a principal component analysis plot, which shows us the clustering of the different type of honeys for the Raman spectroscopy, the source spectroscopy. And we can see that again, the heather samples cluster quite separately from the rest of the honeys, and they form a tight cluster. So when it comes to the prediction models, the modeling strategy that we took was to first of all, we took our original data set, we did our pretreatment and our noise reduction, and then we separated into a training set and a testing set. So the training set was used to train a machine learning algorithm to recognize the type of honey. So it was trained to recognize the heather honey, the borage honey, and the multifloral honeys.
You have 10 minutes left. Okay.
Pardon?
You have 10 minutes left.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
So after we trained those models, then we used the testing subset, which was held independently. And then we tested the model on those test samples. And then we measured the accuracy of our prediction. So here I show two plots which show the classification accuracy of the two techniques. So the fluorescent versus the source. And for predicting and identifying botanical origin, fluorescence really performed very well, and more than 95% of the predictions was correct. Source was slightly less accurate, with 80% of the predictions being correct. So both methods show a good potential for identification purposes. The next step was to detect adulteration. So we used a corn-based syrup, and we purposefully adulterated pure heather honeys with different amounts of corn syrup. And then we took measurements with both techniques to find whether they can distinguish between pure and adulterated samples. So this is how the fluorescent signal changed. The more syrup, the more adulteration we performed. And again, we used machine learning technique in order to be able to identify the adulteration. So here we have a regression model which accurately managed to predict the amount of syrup that we had, the percentage of syrup that we had added in our adulterated samples. And the other plot again shows a binary classification model. So if I'm only interested in whether a sample is adulterated or pure, how accurate is the model? And when using fluorescence, we had an 80% prediction accuracy. But when we used the source, the Raman technique, we had an almost 100% accuracy in detecting adulteration. So that was a very encouraging result. So in conclusion, this project successfully demonstrated the potential of employing these rapid spectroscopic techniques for honey characterization. And both were able to successfully differentiate honey according to the floral origin. Source in particular was the most promising method for adulteration detection in honey. So this was the first project which led to further projects that are taking place right now. We have only this year started working on more projects. And one of these projects is, again, using Raman spectroscopy, a different type of Raman spectroscopy, to have a rapid testing system for contaminant detection in African honey, such as pesticide and heavy metal. And then we also have a 4-year PhD funded studentship which is for honey authentication using DNA markers and metabolic fingerprint. And I will just spend a few minutes to describe what we'll be doing for this particular project. So the student working on this project is Sophie Dot, who couldn't be here with us to talk about her project. So I'll try and give you a short overview. So in this project, we're only focusing on heather honey because it's the most abundant source of nectar for the honeybees in the UK. And it's important to preserve these heather moor sites for environmental purposes. But also this honey is quite famous for its medicinal properties. So it is compared to the Manuka honey from New Zealand in terms of its antioxidant and antimicrobial properties. So the approach that we're taking is to use DNA markers to characterize this heather from Calluna vulgaris species, and also characterize the metabolic fingerprint from this honey that we can directly connect back to the floral source. And we can use this particular approach to also determine adulteration in honey. The final aims is to assess the bioactivity of the heather honey, and this is going to be done in a partner university in Queen's University, Belfast. And finally, we will develop again an artificial intelligence tool to determine floral and geographical origins for the honey and also detect adulteration. So I've already mentioned that heather honey has become quite famous around the UK and Europe for its medicinal properties, and this has been substantiated and supported by recent research that has found that has become quite famous for the UK press. And there's two types of heather honey. There's the bell heather, which comes from a species called Erica cinerea, and there's the link heather, which is the most prevalent and most famous type of honey, if you like, which comes from Calluna vulgaris. So currently there's no standard authenticity test that can determine if link heather is monofloral. The only thing that can be done is melisopaninology, so counting pollen grains. But this is problematic because pollen grains from link heather can be underrepresented. So even if a honey sample is pure, it might not show by just doing this method. So we need to find alternative methods in order to characterize this particular type of honey. And we were going to do this by using metabolomics. So we're going to employ GCMS and LCMS technology to characterize the metabolic fingerprint of this type of honey. So things such as antioxidants and volatile aroma compounds will be used in order to connect the floral source with the final product, the honey product. And the other approach that we're going to take is use DNA markers. So if we can confidently find the DNA of the plant, and we can measure the amount of the DNA in the honey, then we can confidently say that this is coming from this particular plant and it is pure, or it is blended, or it has nothing to do with the specific floral source. So there's a technique called DNA metabarcoding, apologies. And this is a technique that can be used to analyze multifloral honey samples. So I'm not going to go into too many specifics, but basically you sequence the honey sample that you extract the DNA and you send it to a company that will sequence it. And then you have the whole range of floral sources that the honeybees have foraged from. So this is going to give you a very detailed picture of all the floral sources that have contributed to this honey, but it's not so much useful when you're trying to characterize monofloral honeys. This is good for giving you an idea of the habits and the diet of the pollinators, and it's good for environmental studies, but not so much for honey authenticity studies. It's a very expensive and time-consuming method. So an alternative, what we are going to be using is a qPCR method, which is a very quick technique. We extract the DNA in the same way as we do with the Metabolomics coding, but instead we use a primer that is unique for the heather honey. And by using a quick qPCR method, we can confidently assign the honey to this specific botanical source, and we can also measure the amount of DNA, which will give us an idea about the purity of the honey. The good thing is that we can use the exact same technique to detect adulteration with different type of sugar syrups, plant-based sugar syrups. So there's already techniques developed for corn and rice syrup, and they use this exact same extraction method for the DNA, exactly the same principles, but just different markers for identifying these adulterants. So two birds with one stone, really. And in conclusion, we will combine the results from all the studies in order to determine important biomarkers and characteristics for this particular honey. And we're going to use machine learning to develop a high precision decision-making tool to find the floral source of the honey, the geographical origin, and also adulteration with sugar-based syrups. So thank you very much for your attention, and apologies if I went over time. I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
Okay. There is a question from over white chart. So, Michael, can you read the question?
Sure. The question is, what are the other types of adulterous substances tested?
So what other substances we're testing for adulteration in this particular project, or in how it can be adulterated in general? What other types of adulterants can be used? Is that
anything that can be used, and anything that you tested or you know that can be tested, so, just the general.
Yeah. So at the beginning, I mentioned that adulteration is a complex issue, so it can take many forms. What we're focusing on this particular project, because it's a PhD project, we cannot cover everything. We're focusing on adulteration with plant-based syrups. So the most prevalent adulteration syrups for adulteration is corn syrup, sugarcane, rice. In Africa, I hear that they adulterate with banana syrup, and I'm guessing in different parts of the world they adulterate with whatever is available to the people there. So we will be focusing on the most widespread types of plant-based syrups used for adulteration, and this is mainly the corn syrup and the rice syrup, but we can extend it to other types as well. Then there's other types of adulteration that I said is so is there a comment on that? Can I carry on?
Yes, you can carry on.
Okay,
Please.
thank you. So other types of adulteration, for example, can be with mixing low quality honey with high quality honey. And our pipeline is going to be able to tell whether the honey is pure or not. So whether it comes from this particular floral source and this geographical area, or whether it has been, it's not pure, whether it has been adulterated with cheap honey, or it can be purposefully, or maybe sometimes the bee farmers think that it's coming from heather, but it's not really coming from heather. So our pipeline is going to be able to differentiate and give us an answer for this. The other project that I mentioned very briefly that we're working on is going to be focusing on contaminants, detecting contaminants in honey. And there is a Raman technique called SERS, Surface Enhanced Raman spectroscopy, which can be used to detect the presence of small traces of these contaminants, which can be, they can pose a health risk to humans. So you can use this technique to find things like pesticides, antibiotics. Sometimes they have used banned antibiotics if there is, for example, an infestation of the beehives. And these antibiotics are detrimental to human health and they shouldn't be there. So we're developing methods that can actually detect these adulterants or contaminants, if you will, and things like pesticides and also heavy metals. So we're not going to be able to solve everything, all the problems in terms of adulteration, but we are picking the most important issues and trying to address those issues. But it's something that we hope to carry on working on. So in the future, we might be able to address other issues as well.
Okay. F, can you read the question?
The next question is from Dr. Orawan, and she's asking, like, how many percentage of corn syrup have to be added to honey for it to be considered or detected as adulterated?
Ideally, zero. So ideally, you don't want, for pure honey, you don't want any adulterants. The methods that exist right now, so the most recognized method, which is the stable isotope method, it can detect corn syrup, if I'm not mistaken, down to 7% of adulteration. So if you have added 5% of corn syrup, it might not be able to give you, to pick up that adulteration. But normally when adulteration happens, it's not in a tiny amount, it's considerable amount, because it's a matter of cost and a matter of making profit. So the DNA-based methods that we will be employing, they're quite sensitive and they can pick at least 3% of adulteration. So it's a matter of developing sensitive enough methods in order to catch the people who are trying to cheat. So if you're asking in terms of law, I don't think there is a percentage that is accepted. If a honey, you know, if there's a label and it says honey, it should be honey, 100% honey, and not corn syrup or rice syrup or anything like that.
Okay, another question. Michael, can you read the question?
Just if it's fed to bees, does that change anything? If you feed it to the bees, like,
Yeah,
and then
that's a
they
good question.
internalize it?
So that's a different matter. So I'm not sure how the situation is in Thailand, but here in the UK during winter months, producers might have to feed the bees with sugar so that they will survive. Okay, they cannot go out and forage when it's winter months. So this is acceptable. This is a practice that is acceptable. But they shouldn't do that in excess. They should only do it when it's needed. Sometimes when they do the isotope method to detect adulteration, sometimes this will actually say that a honey is adulterated because it has found traces from the sugar that the bees have been fed during the winter months. And this is an issue because it's not an illegal practice. It's not something that is not allowed. It's just, it shouldn't be happening in excess, and the bees should, when the weather allows, they should go out and forage. So yeah, this is something that is a little bit controversial. And when people hear that the bees have been fed with sugar, they react a bit negatively. But in countries like in North Europe, this is something that is a necessity really, because otherwise the bees wouldn't survive.
Oh, okay, I think for the Q&A session for Dr. Maria, I think we should stop for this, and we jump to Dr. Orawan to talk about her research experience. And then if anybody has the question for Dr. Maria, you can type. And if Dr. Maria just has to leave before the session ends, she will answer, and I will send the email back to you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So Dr. Orawan, please share your screen.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's start.
So thank you for the, okay, so after you see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation, giving me a second opportunity again to share. Oh, no, actually a third opportunity to share my work. So as all of you know here, that the most widespread species of honeybee that domesticate in the beekeeping industry, it's a European honeybees, Apis mellifera. Here is also true in Thailand, but we know that there are many species of stingless bee and honeybees out there in Asia, especially in South Asia. Are there any room to play for utilize a product out of this species or this group, or are there any room to do beekeeping or farming in this group? So this is kind of my personal passion. When I started 25 years ago with bees, and 15 years ago when I found our research center. So therefore, it's the origin of our name of the lab. That's why we focus on the native bees. The European honeybee is already well adapted, but the group, which is still wide, but distributed throughout Asia, are still there and waiting for us, for science and tech to develop and discover. So this work is gonna be talking about a lesson learned, our traveling developed a social enterprise called BSANG, which is a, we use science and technology that we develop, we use our research skill to improve quality and to improve a methodology, doing methodology to use and utilize native beer and stainless beer. And then we are trying to improve the quality of this group and trying to register the product into a market, into a commercial market. So this is how my talk going to be today. So when we talk about beekeeping, we may divide into 3 groups. The first one is the domesticated Apis mellifera, which is all of us familiar to this group already, Asian apis and stainless bee. Each group have their own strengths and weakness. So the Apis mellifera in our continent is low absconding rate, low resistance to pests, parasites, and disease. That they provide high yield, 25 kilogram to 40 kilogram per box per year. They have high capital or high investment and management costs. With Asian apis, it's high absconding rate, which is a weakness actually. High resistance to pests, parasite, and disease. This is strength. They provide a medium yield, 5 to 10 kilogram per colonies per year under the natural condition. For the capital, they're medium to low investment and management costs. When we come into stainless bee, this group are very low absconding rate, high resistance to pests, parasite, and disease. Low medium yield. It really depends on how big the stainless bee are. So it's ranked from 0.3 kilogram to 5 kilogram per colony per year. With this group is low investment and management costs. So as you know, Asian apis and stainless bee or native bee is still a lot of room to play. So what we are looking for is we're looking for the beekeeping technology or the methodology of utilization using Asian honeybees and stainless bee to optimize their benefit. So we would like to develop a technology where it is inclusive innovation, where everyone can, being a beekeeper, everyone can start with. So with the Asian apis and stainless bee, the investment is quite low. If they have a knowledge, they don't really need a lot of investment or the money to start it. So this would be a good option for the one who doesn't have a lot of money. So as we know that, I screen myself, block my site. So we have 11 species of honeybees, and one species, Apis mellifera, already is well domesticated. So we have another 10 to choose. But in Thailand, we have 4 species, Apis cerana, dorsata, and Uniformis, and Phoria. So in our bee sang section, we develop Apis cerana, dorsata, and Phoria, because Uniformis in Thailand is not common. Some part, especially in the human community, Apis and Uniformis doesn't adapt. They're good enough to stay with humans. So in some area, Apis and Uniformis is already extinct from the area. So when for Apis cerana, the major problem is about absconding rate, and we have to say that about 90% absconding happen with Apis cerana. So what we do here with our technique, we don't try to keep Apis cerana for the whole year. What we do is we use a base hive during flowering, blooming season, during a flowering season. So when we trap a swarm then the bee will start to collect honey and store honey. So for the first honey harvest, for the first round of honey harvest, we developed a technique where we could move a natural colony into a modern box or modern hive. And then beekeeper can keep it for another round for honey harvest. So to this method, the return of investment is very high, which I will show you later for this. For Foria, the problem is that Foria is very Foria is very well adapted species, so we can find them everywhere. With the very limited flowers, we still can keep Foria and produce honey. So the problem with Foria is that they produce quite a few honey. So, and actually one colony, they give 0.3 kilogram per colony per season. So what we do is we're trying to develop a technique where we can increase the yield from Apis Foria. So this technique we develop, we can do a multiple honey harvest. So it's up to, it can increase up to 4 times higher than under the natural condition. So one colony can provide honey yield for 1.2 kilogram per colony per season. For stingless bee, we have many lists for the species where they provide honey. As I said, because the diversity of stingless bee is quite high, so the big one, a big size stingless bee, they will give quite a lot of honey, 3 to 10 kilogram per colony. But with this big size, normally it will be our species or group where they have a natural habitat in the forest, in the living tree trunk. So this colony will stay under the atmosphere, under the temperature. This is quite cool. Under Thailand atmosphere or Thailand temperature, those colonies could not really stay the heat. When we do a farming, it's very difficult to propagate them. So with this group, even they give quite a lot of honey, but then the best species or the best group would be Tetragonula. This one is the anthropophilic group, which means that they like to stay near to human or near to human community. So this group, they're quite small, but they are very tough, and they are somehow has a high resistance to the heat. So with this group, they give a promising a yield of honeys. So in Thailand, we get a Tetragonula, most common species is Tetragonula pactini and Livisep. But then some of the beekeeper, they do Itima, Lepidotrimegona or Thoracica. Stingless bee beekeeping is calling here in Thailand as rising star. So in 2014, we have a registered number of beekeepers is stingless bee beekeepers 700 farm, but then it's right up to 5,000 in 2021. So it's like eightfold higher. So most of the farm will be small scale farming, ranking from 20 to 50 hives. So when we resolve a problem with producer, trying to resolve a weakness and trying to make them give higher yields, but then how we could enter this product or this honey into a value chains. So when we look into a market value, honey market value is not so high. It's about 5 to 6 billion US dollar. But honey market is the market which is one of the most stable market. They grow small and slow, but they never decline. So it's one of the promising, if you want a sustainable market. So honey would be the one that you could choose. So for Asia Pacific honeys, in 2011, 2021 is about $3 billions, but then it's high. It is more higher, up to 30% within 5 years. So I think it's a good chance for us to develop and to enter a market side. But how? What is the strategy? As I said, native bees. Our concept is we're trying to do a stationary beekeeping. We don't move a bee around. We will we will keep them in the same area or the same farm and the whole years, and trying to manipulate them to produce enough honey or to produce good honey. So the small scale beekeeping will provide us not a mass honey yield, but so what we do is we will speak with a quality, not a yield. So a very good model about this is Manuka honey. You could see here Manuka honey, they have an index where is a composition, one index that tell the anti-inflammatory, the MGO numbers. With the anti-inflammatory index, the price of the honey, you can see group 1, 2, 5, 3, and Brazil. You can see is about $2,000 per ton to 5,000. But when it speaks to anti-inflammatory activity, the price is high up to 20,000. So it's 10 times higher. So this is how our strategy should be. So that's why we're trying to focus on the honey as a functional food. So we're talking about the functional food. Honey is one of the beloved topic of scientists. So there's a lot of publication talking about the functional quality in honey. For example, prebiotics, probiotics, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, immunity booster, detoxification, or all the other topics. But anyway, to do a science and to give information, then how to produce the quality honey in the significant yield, and you can repeat a production method, and then to put this into a economic value chain. So it is another story. So it's not just like just jump to the market, then it will happen. So what we do is we're trying to develop the honey in our network. So when we talk about honey, the quality honey, honey starting by the bee collect nectar from flowers, and then this nectar will go into a honey stomach, and the honey stomach had enzyme, and which is related to bee species, and then they have microbe, a good microbe, which is also related to bee species. Those will add some metabolites, add some compound, which is to improve the qualities of honey at the end. So when we go into this section, the qualities of honey come from, the first thing is flower, second thing is for the bees, and the third is a group of good microbe in the gut of the bees. So we focus on this. So when we do a diversity of honey, when we're trying to choose which one gonna be the best to produce a good honey in the certain area of our beekeeper. So we do a research, like here is the comparison that we keep the bee in the same area as Phoria, Serrana, Tetragonula pectini, Tetragonula leafisep, in the 3 different area. And you could see here that, well, as you expect, stingless bee is the highest, and then Phoria and Serrana. But this is not the key, who is the best and who is the lowest. The key is that we do this every year for 3 years. And every time we will add some more flora or some more a good plant that we expect to improve biological active property in the honey. And then we check whether the honey quality in general is improved. So we do this with every farm in our network. So when we come into a plant species, you know, in the tropical rainforest, we had 2,500, 250,000 plant species, flowering plant in tropical forest. And then we have 17,000 species for the medicinal plant. So we have a lot of choice to see. So we can look at the species that is easy to keep or easy to plant, and then it's like it's valid to the area of our beekeepers. So here's how we do. Like we do in the orchid tree, this is a common plant we found in dipterocarp forest, or the normal ornamental plant like yellow cosmos. So we collect the honey from those bees. We collect the honey from those bees, and then we're trying to see how is the quality of honey, which is we focus on two groups, the total phenolics content and anti-inflammatory. So what we see here, you can see yellow cosmos is the best one for total phenolics. So through this, we can also select which species of plants you can add into an area. So it's not only the type of plant, we also trying to calculate a carrying capacity. What we do is we're trying to collect and to calculate how much one tree giving a flower, how much flower one tree giving in one season, and how much one flower could give a nectar, how much nectar could transfer into a honey. So we do this research one by one. For example, this is an example of the area that we do with singlet bee, Phakdee, and then we plant pumpkin, and we plant cosmos. So pumpkin, one flower of pumpkin give 1,250 microliter of nectar, and then giving the concentration 33 bricks. The area with 40 square meter, 400 square meters. For cosmos keep much lower, so it's 15.5 microliter per flower, and then 17 bricks with 400 square meter. So for this, we're trying to calculate and to see in the foraging range of Phakdee, and we see it's 0.9 right. And this 0.9 right, we calculate we put stingless bee in and trying to see and expect to see the number as we would give 6.4 kilogram per right. But when we test in the field, it's come out like 3.5 kilogram per right. It's about 45% decrease, and then lower than what we expect. So we do this with also Faria and many kind of plant, for example. So to date, we trying to develop a carrying capacity. So what we suggest our beekeeper, we will suggest which plant species you should put in, and if you want medicinal quality, or if you want higher yield honey, things like that. So we can improve year by years. So it's come up with the together with GIS technique, we will come up with the landscape design for beekeeping, which is unique to each area. And this area had their own GIS profile. And every time we put another plant in, we will try to recheck again whether the quality of honey is up, the quality and the yield. So in every sample, we also do the probiotic yeast, where we found in native bee 15 species of probiotics, the potential probiotics, and we found 2 species where is good for human health. And using HPLC, we also check for glucose, fructose, and maltose. One thing that is quite surprised that when we have a stationary beekeeping, so we try to keep them in the same place. So related to the season and harvest, the quality of sugar is quite stable. Here is total phenolic content, which is one of the antioxidant parameter. You could see here is Apis aureus, dorsata, stingless bee, Serrana, mellifera. So we're trying to recheck these in the potential farm of beekeeping of a bee farm in our network, and we recheck every year to see whether it's stable enough. We don't really only look at the yield, but we look at the yield together with the qualities. And here again, you can see stingless bee is quite good. Okay, so here is the total phenolic content. Every time we have the benchmarking. The straight bar here is the benchmarking, where we collect the honey in Thailand market, and together with Manuka with different numbers of the anti-inflammatory index. Here is the protease inhibitor, which is an anti-inflammatory quality. I just want to show here that this is the honey which collect from Phorea, from bullet tree, from orchid tree, and from cosmos. You can see here that not only antioxidant activity, but it's also good with anti-inflammatory activity. The full number is 100%, so it's up to 90%. So from this result, you can also, we will suggest our beekeeper that we got the result. And if you want to improve the quality of anti-inflammatory in your honey, you can put those plant in. So it's gonna be a long-term plan, but it's gonna be a very sustainable plan for making a good area for the bees. We have but this we use a GCMS technique for honey fingerprint. Mostly we focus on aromatic profiles. So now Bisang had 24 types of honeys from 17 provinces in Thailand. 8 types already launched during 2018 to 21. And 22 is ready to launch for coming years. And well, actually, if any friends here would like to share or would like to networking with this project, so with another country or the other part of the world, I would be very good, because then we will have a very strong connection for these bees. Yeah, you can see we start from the farming protocol and until trying to increase a high products, improve the functional qualities of honey, characterization, and then do a marketing or branding. Yes, for branding, in Thailand, we really do not have a brand for high value honey. So we do have to study these by by our collaboration. So what we do is come up with 2 line of product, the bee leaf and bee sand. And as I said, the member of our beekeeper is now 700 members from 500 households, 245 villages from all over Thailand. As I said, we would like to develop a technology as an inclusive innovation. Everyone can access. So our beekeeping technique with a knowledge that the lab will teach, the kid can learn. So we have teach a school kid. So this boy is about maybe 6, I think, when I met him the first time. They learn to keep Sarana and stingless bee. The kid can do beekeeping. The youth also can. This group is a Hill tribe student from their first school. So after this, after the first school, they will not go to the secondary school. So they will drop the school and go to laboring work or laboring job. So we go to teach these students to increase the beekeeping skill for them, especially the native one, to hope that they will use this skill to generate their additional income. This is the retirement group in Ratchaburi, Thailand. So it's own people come together because with the small scale beekeeping doesn't need a lot of strength. So you don't need to be so big or so strong to do. So the retirement or the kid can do it. The female or male also can do it. This is the example of one of our network, in Banka, Ratchaburi. So this man is the head of the village. He is the head of the village with the villager under his care. Most of them doing a pineapple plantation, and this pineapple plantation use a lot of chemical. So in his village, under his the village under his responsibility had debt up to 23 million for his village. So he want to decrease the debt and also to decrease the percentage of using chemical, because a lot of people in his village get sick because of the chemical. So he's trying to use bee to introduce this idea or this mindset, but then he failed at the first step. So later he developed his own land to be a learning space, and this learning space later get attention from people around and also villager. So now he have got a community enterprise. He had registered community enterprise with almost 1,200 members, and 50% decrease chemical use in a member, and 10% terminate, 100% terminate using a chemical. So this is a very good progress in this village. This is a group of Mabri, which is a hill tribe. This is the example of the person who live next to the tree or forest, next to a conservation area, and then they hunt. They collect honey from Dosata. But the first time that we met this group, they said the yield of honey is decreased every year. How they can solve this problem? What I trying to talk to them, I said you had to implement eco-friendly honey harvest method. So we trying to teach them how to implement the eco-friendly by when collect honey, you leave, they had to leave 30% of honey for the bees, and do not cut down the brood of the bees. So when they got this and they try to do what we suggest for the next year, honey is up from, it increased from 400 kilogram to 600 kilogram in the second year, and then for the third year it's up to 10,000 kilogram. Okay, this is my brief. So when we come into the return on investment, this is the number of colony. It really depends on carrying capacity of most of our beekeeper hats. So with stingless bee, tetragonula, they can keep 200 colony. Episporia with 50 colonies, Sorana with 30 colony. So at the end, you can see this number. The return of investment is very good. For stingless bee, 76%. For Rhea, 60%. Sorana is very surprised. So it's 290% because the investment is very low with the base high technique. So when we talk about honey from native bees, especially I would have to say especially the method that we are trying to implement, it means that we talk about the reduction of chemical use, and the chemical use will mean the healthiness of the owner of the farm, and then it will related to the wellness of natural ecosystem and forest. It means that we can produce a high qualities of honey, which will secure pollinator in area, and the very important pollinator, honeybee and stingless bee, which will relate to insurance our food security, and at a finally step, it will resilient our communities. So now we sang on the shelves of the shop of Chai Patana Foundation under King Ramanai in Bangkok, and it's selling online through our lab page. Here is the shop that is under construction. It will locate in B Park for the next couple of years, which is in Ratchaburi, Thailand. Okay, I will happy and very appreciate to take any question and comment. Thank you. Would I over time?
Thank you, Dr. Orawan, for your presentation. So there are some questions to Dr. Orawan. Can you?
I've got the first one if you want. I see it's from Dr. Maria. Are native bees endangered? I was also wondering if Apis mellifera is putting pressure on native bee populations.
It's other way around. I think especially in South Asia, because mellifera here they're quite weak. So for 20-year experience with bees, I never see mellifera in the natural hive or natural cavity. So they can be kept and they can survive only under the farming condition. That's the first thing. But then if in a very intensive number of colony of mellifera, that will be a competition with the native bee. So in a farming area, you will see a very few colony of native bees.
So the next question is from Olga, and she's asking, do Thai farmers in your group or outside of it feed their honey and their bees sugar in any form after harvesting the honey?
Normally, I would say there's very few cases, like very rare case that they will feed a natural coconut sugar syrups or a natural cane sugar syrups. So just only 1 or 2 days when they have a very high rain or very intensive rain continuously many days, things like that. But normally they will they will keep some portion of honey to feed them in this emergency case. Normally they don't do, and for the bee itself, they also don't like it.
For our next question, have there any exports made from Thailand or overseas? I guess, yeah, maybe, I don't know if this, maybe it's for your honey or honey in general, how important are exports and where do they go for honey from Thailand?
I'm not very sure, but most of the exporting honeys come from Apis mellifera that is registered into a system. But I'll see some exporter trying to export Apis cerana honey to Malaysia. But all the other species we consume in within the country.
So for bee sank, you're not exporting, you're just selling locally.
We're planning about this, but the yield is not yet that high. But for the future, I would love to, because I have the idea that we could implement this idea with other countries too, like in Southeast Asia. So if all the other friends would like to share our technology, I would be happy to share and to develop a beekeeping network in other countries, in our friends.
So there's a question from above. If there's has any management techniques for stingless bees been developed, especially, I'm not sure, Lovesipis? I'm not sure what to pronounce that, I'm sorry.
Stingless bee, what?
Management techniques.
Sorry, could you please repeat the question again?
So like, has any stingless bees management techniques been developed?
Yes, especially in the overall, it can be divided into two groups. The group where we can develop, we can domesticate the tetragonula group. We develop keeping technique where we could increase honey quality and yield. But then in the group where it's the forest stingless bee, this one we still trying to develop a technique of propagation to increase the successful rate of propagation. So yes, we had and we have something to share if you would like to see.
I don't see any other questions yet. If there's somebody who has another question, I don't know if you see any more, Ab or Sue. I think otherwise.
May I ask another one?
Okay.
It's about the functional food aspect. Do you plan to make any educational courses, or make it more popular so people understand the value of your brand and understand that different honeys might have different functional benefits for the health?
Yes, I plan. There are two things happening in our lab now. First thing is we develop a microcredit course where you can learn beekeeping and beekeeping from native bees, honeybees, and stingless bee online and on site. So this can be that you learn everything online first and then come to the lab for practice. So this will include from the beginning of starting, like how to collect bee and what is a bee species, until honey collection, and to develop a function and biological property of the honey. So this course is under developed, and I think it will be launched at the end of this year. And then then another work that we are working on now is about sensory analysis. We had, like I said, we had 40 kinds of honey on the list, and we will develop a sensory technique where you can taste and you can feel and you can describe the detail of honeys from those.
It's like wine tasting, right? But it's like it's gonna be
yes,
honey
yes, that is my
tasting.
that is my goal. So keep your eye on. I'm really trying to this direction.
Really interesting. So another question from Spencer. Spencer, what do you want to ask?
Hi, Spencer. Hi, Spencer.
Hi, Laura. Sorry, I missed it most likely in here. Can you very briefly, how do you define the qualities of honey? What are the indicators?
The quality that we focus now is actually that we send a message to consumer. The quality that we use antioxidant and anti-inflammatory and composition of sugar.
Okay.
All the other we also test, but it's based on Thailand FDA, which is doesn't really tell our quality, biological qualities.
Okay, and your system were able to detect all these indicators looking at the different honey or the honey you collected?
Yes, yeah. From normally we will have a farm and we have we will follow up the history of each farm, each area, and trying to see that if they can keep a quality of honey or even if they can improve it year by year.
So in the market, there is no such things as the quality label for honey, unified acceptance of quality of honey.
Yes, except Manuka.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, the last question is from Aya March.
Yes,
yeah.
I have a question. So
yeah, you can ask her the question.
Okay, so for the I want to ask about the farming method of the Thai people of the honeys.
Yes.
And do they need to have a government license, or they can just talk to the city hall if they want to make the bee farm?
Well, I am one of the committee who develop a license protocol. So with Sarana, they have to do a license. With Mellifera is already had. So this farming standard we have with Sarana now, and we have with stingless bee now. So now we are going to develop with a standard of honey from stingless bee. So yes, they have to, if they want to be, they have to register and get a quality qualification.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much.
I think the session is in. So I want to share a bit about our group in Facebook, which you can subscribe. Sorry. Okay, you see the presentation, right? Okay, so we have APIA Facebook group, which is a private group. We communicate and share the knowledge for the pollinator, bee, honey, everything about pollination in here. So, and the next event we will share in here as well. So if you are interested in our group, please follow the group, subscribe, and you can scan QR codes to join us here. So I think the session is end now, and I want to thank you, Dr. Orawan and Dr. Maria for for sharing your knowledge and valuable experience and many techniques to learn in this session. So make me want to go to Ratchaburi to see their honey center, your honey center.
Yes, please come. I'll invite you all.
Okay. So maybe
Yeah,
I
next
would love to come
event.
too.
Yeah. Maybe next
Thank you
event.
very much. It's been a real pleasure, and for me, it
Uh-huh.
was really fascinating to see all the activities that Dr. Orawan is doing. So hopefully we'll keep in touch and find opportunities in the future to meet again.
Thank you, Dr. Maria. You have done a great job too. It's a very interesting talk. And thank you, everyone. Keep connect and come and visit B Park. I'll waiting. I'll come
Michael,
to
you want to
soon.
say anything?
Thanks, Dr. Maria and Miss Orawan. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Definitely.
Bye.
Miss
Thanks, Donald.
Sue, I
Yeah.
actually emailed you about the WWF Thailand because like
Uh-huh.
I'm currently an intern in Indonesia too. So I would
Uh-huh.
ask if like there's like job opportunities. So I just sent an email.
Oh, okay.
ขอบคุณครับ
Okay. ขอบคุณมากค่ะ Thank you so much.
Bye bye. Take care, everyone. Take care,
Take care.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye
I'll see
bye.
you again next time.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
ขอบคุณมากค่ะ